Here's $2, honey. That should cover whatever cheap perfume you bathed in tonight. Senator Vincent Hale pulled two crumpled bills from his pocket and flicked them straight at her face.
Never!
His circle of senators and lobbyists erupted with laughter. Or better yet, use it for bus fare back to whatever trailer park you crawled out of. The money hit Raven Castillo's cheek and fell to the marble floor. 400 guests watched. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. What none of them knew, this 22-year-old girl they just humiliated would rescue the senator's daughter before sunrise and bring his entire empire crashing down by morning. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels around the world. The $2 bills lay on the marble floor like a death sentence. 400 of Washington's most powerful people stared at them, then at Raven, then at each other, waiting to see what the poor girl would do next. Senator Vincent Hale straightened his Armani tuxedo and took a long sip of his scotch. The smile on his face was the kind that had crushed careers, destroyed opponents, and ended political dynasties for over 20 years. He wore it like a crown. His allies flanked him like wolves around their alpha. Congressmen, lobbyists, defense contractors, men who moved billions with a phone call and never lost a second of sleep over the consequences. Well, Hale gestured down at the money. Pick it up. That's probably more than you make in a week doing... He paused. Let the silence stretch. Let every eye in the room lock onto Raven. Whatever it is you do. Laughter rippled through the crowd like a wave. Raven didn't move. Her hands stayed at her sides. Her breathing was steady. Her expression was absolutely nothing. I think she's in shock, Congressman Bradley Peters said, loud enough for the entire ballroom to hear. Peters was a man famous for three things: his committee chairmanship, his wandering hands, and the 4 sexual harassment settlements his lawyers had quietly buried over the years. Maybe she's never seen real money before. More laughter. Perhaps she was expecting a bigger tip. This from Victoria Marsh, Hale's chief fundraiser, a woman whose cosmetic surgery budget could feed a small town for a year. Though I can't imagine what services she'd provide that would be worth more than $2. The crowd roared. Raven bent down slowly. She picked up both bills, smoothed them carefully with her fingers, folded them once, and slipped them into the pocket of her camouflage cargo pants. Thank you, sir, she said quietly. I'll treasure them. Treasure them? Hale stepped closer. Close enough that Raven could smell the 18-year scotch on his breath, and the arrogance that oozed from every pore. Do you even know who I am? Yes, sir. Senator Vincent Hale, chairman of the Intelligence Committee, presidential frontrunner. And do you know what that means? It means you decide how much money goes to the people who protect this country. Important work. Hale's voice dripped with self-satisfaction. Very important work, sir. Raven's voice was soft, almost submissive, almost broken. Important work. Hale snorted. What would you know about important work? You're what? Catering staff? Here to pour champagne and try to look pretty? Something like that, sir. Then why were you standing so close to my daughter? Hale's voice went from mocking to ice in half a second. The shift was terrifying. I saw you lurking near her table, watching her, like some kind of predator. I was refilling water glasses, sir. Bullshit. Hale grabbed Raven's arm. His fingers dug into her flesh hard enough to leave bruises that would last a week. I know your type. Gold diggers who think they can worm their way into money. Nobodies who think they belong in rooms like this. Richard. A woman's voice sliced through the confrontation like a blade. Margaret Hale, the senator's wife, pushed through the circle of onlookers. Unlike her husband, her face wasn't smiling. It was troubled. Deeply troubled. That's enough. Stay out of this, Margaret. You're making a scene. I'm making a point. Hale tightened his grip on Raven's arm. His knuckles went white. This trash needs to learn her place. And what place is that? Margaret asked quietly. Anywhere but near my family. Hale released Raven with a shove that sent her stumbling backward 3 steps. She caught herself before she fell, but barely. Security, get this woman out of my sight and make sure she never works in this city again. 2 guards materialized from the crowd. Large men with earpieces, thick necks, and zero sympathy in their eyes. Come with us, miss, the first one said, grabbing Raven's elbow. Don't bother being gentle, Hale called after them. She's not worth the effort. Raven allowed herself to be dragged toward the service exit. Her head bowed, her shoulders slumped. The perfect picture of a humiliated young woman who had just learned the hardest lesson of her life. But as the guards pulled her past the corner table near the kitchen entrance, something happened. Sophie Hale, the senator's 19-year-old daughter, was sitting alone, her plate untouched, her champagne flat, her eyes red like she'd been crying for hours and had only stopped minutes ago. Their eyes met, and Sophie's face went white. "Wait," Sophie whispered. Her hand reached out. "I know you. I've seen you before. But the guards were already pushing Raven through the service door, and Sophie's voice disappeared under the crowd's continuing laughter and the clink of champagne glasses raised in celebration of the senator's devastating wit. The night air hit Raven like a slap. She stood alone in the service alley. The distant sounds of the gala, the music, the laughter, the self-congratulation of people who had never struggled for anything in their lives, drifted through the walls like a bad joke. Raven pulled out a phone. Not the cheap prepaid she'd been carrying as part of her cover. A different one. Military-grade, encrypted. She dialed a number from memory. "Warden, this is Ghost. Cover is burned, but objective achieved." Admiral James Beckett's voice came through crisp, controlled, and completely unsurprised. "Report. Senator Hale is exactly what we suspected. Arrogant, cruel, and completely blind to anything he considers beneath him. His security is focused on external threats, foreign operatives, political rivals, protesters. They're not watching the inside." "And the daughter?" "She recognized me." Raven paused, let the weight of that settle. "From Afghanistan. 2 years ago. The extraction. She never saw your face clearly during that operation." "No, sir, but something about me registered. A feeling. A memory she can't quite place." Raven's voice shifted. Harder now. The submissive catering girl was gone. "She's scared, Admiral. Not of me. Of something inside that building. Someone inside that building." "Explain." "I've been watching her all night. Every time Derek Langford looks at her, she flinches. Every time he walks past her table, her hands start shaking. She won't eat. She won't drink. She's been sitting in that corner like a trapped animal, waiting for the cage to close." "Langford, Hale's Deputy National Security Advisor. The same Langford who's been selling classified military intelligence to foreign buyers for 6 years?" Raven's jaw tightened. "The death threats against Sophie Hale aren't coming from outside the senator's circle, Admiral. They're coming from inside it." Silence on the line. The kind of silence that meant Beckett was recalculating everything. "That's a serious accusation, Ghost." "It's an observation, sir, based on 14 years of reading people in combat zones. Sophie Hale is terrified of Derek Langford, and whatever she knows about him, whatever she's seen, it's big enough that he wants her dead. If you're right, she's in immediate danger." "I know." Raven looked back toward the building. "Which is why I'm not leaving. Ghost, your cover is blown. Every security guard in that building has your face. If Langford has any connection to the threats, then he needs to think I'm gone, that I've been humiliated into nothing and won't be coming back." Raven allowed herself one grim smile. Senator Hale just did me the biggest favor of his life. He made me invisible. What's your plan? Go dark. Find an alternative way back inside. Get to Sophie before Langford does. Find out what she knows and why he wants her dead. And the senator? Let him enjoy his $2 victory. Raven touched her pocket, feeling the crumpled bills. It won't last long. She ended the call and disappeared into the darkness. Inside the gala, Senator Hale was basking in the glow of his own cruelty. Did you see her face? Congressman Peters slapped him on the back, nearly spilling his drink. Absolutely priceless. The look of pure defeat, Hale finished. He accepted another scotch from a passing server without so much as a glance at the young man carrying the tray. These people need to understand the natural order of things, Bradley. They need to be reminded, regularly, that there are wolves and there are sheep. And the sheep do not eat at the wolves' table. Hear, hear, Victoria Marsh raised her glass. To Senator Hale, defender of proper society. They clinked. They drank. They laughed. None of them noticed Derek Langford slipping away from the celebration. He moved through a side corridor, away from the music and the noise, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice barely above a whisper. We have a problem. The voice on the other end was cold, clipped, and carried the faintest trace of a German accent. What kind of problem? That woman. The one Hale just threw out. Something about her bothered me. Bothered you how? The way she moved, the way she stood, the way she watched everything without seeming to watch anything. Langford checked over his shoulder. The hallway was empty. I've been around military people my entire career. I know how operators carry themselves. That woman wasn't catering staff. You think she's law enforcement? I think she's something worse. Langford's voice dropped even lower. There are units that don't appear in any database. Operators who don't officially exist. People whose files are so classified that even I can't access them. I've heard rumors. Rumors aren't evidence. No. But my instincts have kept me alive for 20 years. And right now, they're screaming. Langford stopped walking. His reflection stared back at him from a dark window. A 53-year-old man with silver temples, cold eyes, and the look of someone who had sold his soul so many times, he'd forgotten what it felt like to have one. We need to accelerate the timeline. How accelerated? Tonight. Sophie Hale dies tonight. Langford's jaw tightened. Before that woman, whoever she is, has a chance to interfere. The senator's daughter. You want me to move on the senator's daughter. Tonight. At his own gala. After the gala. When she returns to her Georgetown apartment. Alone. Silence. Then, and the senator? We'll blame foreign terrorists, just like we planned. His grief will fuel his presidential campaign. The grieving father who lost his daughter to America's enemies. Every network will run it for weeks. His approval ratings will spike 15 points overnight. Everyone wins. Except his daughter. Sophie Hale knows too much. Langford's voice went flat. Dead. Like he was discussing quarterly earnings instead of a 19-year-old girl's life. She's seen my files. She's been to my office. She knows about the shipments, the buyers, the accounts. I've kept her silent by threatening her mother. But silence isn't enough anymore. Not with the grand jury investigation starting next month. How do you want it done? Professional kidnapping, ransom demand, failed negotiation, tragic ending. The FBI will investigate for months and find nothing because we control the people doing the investigating. How long do I have? 4 hours. Sophie will be dead before sunrise. Langford ended the call, straightened his tie. adjusted his expression from cold-blooded killer back to loyal political advisor in the space of a single breath. Time to return to the party. Time to smile. Time to play the faithful public servant who would be absolutely devastated when the terrible news arrived. He walked back toward the ballroom. He never noticed the shadow watching him from the service entrance. Raven had heard everything. Every single word. She pressed herself flat against the wall, her heart hammering, her mind already racing through scenarios, timelines, exit strategies, and kill zones. She pulled out her phone. "Warden, this is Ghost. New intel. Langford is accelerating. They're taking Sophie tonight. 4 hours. Location? Her Georgetown apartment. After the gala. Professional team. The broker's people." "The broker?" Beckett's voice went tight. "You're sure?" Langford called him directly. German accent. Talked about the operation like he was ordering dinner. Cold. Professional. Efficient. Raven's breathing was controlled, but her eyes burned. "They're going to kidnap her, fake a ransom demand, and kill her. Make it look like a failed rescue. Langford has sources inside the FBI to make sure the investigation goes nowhere." "I can have a team on site within—" "No. Any official response will be compromised. Langford just said he controls the people investigating. FBI, maybe others. The only way to save Sophie Hale is to do this off the books. Ghost, that's a suicide mission. You're one operator against an unknown number of professional mercenaries, with no backup, no extraction plan, and a 4-hour window." "One operator is all I need, sir." "This isn't Afghanistan. This isn't—" "No, sir, it's not." Raven's voice went cold. So cold that even Beckett, a man who had commanded special operations for 30 years, felt a chill. "In Afghanistan, I was following orders. Tonight, I'm following my gut. These people threw $2 at my face and called me trash. They think I'm nothing. They think I'm a joke." She paused. "They're about to find out exactly how wrong they are." "Ghost. 4 hours, Admiral. That's what I have. Send the backup team to Georgetown. By the time they arrive, I'll have Sophie out and Langford's entire kidnapping operation in pieces." She ended the call before he could argue. Back in the ballroom, Senator Hale was holding court. 3 more scotches in, his voice had gotten louder, and his cruelty had gotten sharper. "The thing about people like that," he was saying to a circle of admirers, "is that they genuinely believe they deserve to be in the same room as us. They see the lights, the champagne, the gowns, and they think, if I just stand here long enough, I'll become one of them." He shook his head with theatrical pity. "It's almost sad. You did her a favor, Vincent." Peters was on his 6th glass, and had already bumped into 2 waitresses. Accidentally, of course. Better she learns now than later. Exactly. Better a $2 lesson at 22 than a lifetime of delusion. "Senator Hale?" A young aide approached, looking nervous. "Your daughter is asking to leave early. She says she's not feeling well." Hale's expression flickered. For just a moment, barely a fraction of a second, something almost human crossed his face. Something that might have been concern. Or might have been irritation that his daughter was causing a disruption at his event. "Tell her she can leave after the keynote speech. I need her in the family photo." "She seems quite upset, sir. She's been—" "I said after the keynote." Hale turned back to his friends. The moment of almost humanity was gone. "Now, where were we?" "The natural order of things," Victoria Marsh offered helpfully. "Ah, yes, the natural order." At the corner table, Sophie Hale sat with her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white. Her phone was on the table in front of her. She kept glancing at it, then away, then back, like she was waiting for a message that could either save her life or end it. She had seen the woman, the one her father had humiliated. She had seen her eyes. And in those eyes, she had recognized something that she couldn't explain logically, but felt in her bones with absolute certainty. She had seen those eyes before. 2 years ago. In the darkness. In the chaos. In a helicopter above the Afghan mountains, while bullets ripped through the air and someone, a woman, held her hand and whispered, "You're safe now. I've got you. You're going to be okay." Sophie hadn't seen the woman's face clearly that night. It was dark. She was drugged. She was terrified beyond the capacity for rational thought. But she remembered the eyes. And tonight, across a ballroom full of liars and monsters, and men who would sell their own children for a political advantage, she had seen those same eyes, staring back at her from a face that her father had just thrown $2 at. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Don't go home tonight. Stay at the gala. Stay in public. I'm coming back for you. G." Sophie stared at the message. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. She typed back with trembling fingers. "Who is this?" The reply came in 3 seconds. "The woman your father just threw $2 at. And the woman who carried you out of Afghanistan." Sophie's breath stopped. Then another message. "Derek Langford is planning to kill you tonight. I heard everything. Don't react. Don't look around. Don't change your behavior. Just stay where you are and trust me." Sophie set the phone face down on the table. She picked up her champagne glass with a hand that was shaking so badly the liquid rippled like an earthquake. She took a sip, set it down. "Trust me." 2 words. From a woman she didn't know. A woman her father had just publicly destroyed. A woman who had every reason to walk away and let the Hale family burn in the hell they had created for themselves. "Trust me." Sophie closed her eyes, and for the first time in 6 months, 6 months of blackmail, of threats, of watching Derek Langford smile at her across dinner tables, while knowing he would kill her the moment she became inconvenient. She felt something she thought she'd never feel again. Hope. Across the ballroom, Derek Langford was watching Sophie. He saw her pick up her phone, saw her face change, saw something shift behind her eyes, something that hadn't been there 10 minutes ago. And his instincts, the same instincts that had kept him alive through 20 years of selling classified intelligence to America's enemies, started screaming again. Something was wrong. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Change of plans. Don't wait for her to go home. We take her from the gala. Tonight. Now." "That's a significant escalation. Security will..." "I'll handle the security. Just have your team at the East Service entrance in 30 minutes.
"And the woman? The one who was thrown out?"
Langford's jaw tightened. "Find her. If she's still anywhere near this building, eliminate her. Quietly." "Understood." Langford ended the call and looked across the ballroom at Sophie Hale. The girl was sitting very still. Too still. Like someone who had just received information that changed everything. "Who texted you, Sophie?" Langford murmured to himself. "And what did they say?" He started walking toward her table, and in the service alley outside, Raven Castillo checked her weapon, adjusted her earpiece, and began moving toward the east entrance of the building. 30 minutes. That was all she had. 30 minutes to get back inside a building where every guard knew her face. 30 minutes to reach Sophie before Langford's team did. 30 minutes to save a girl she'd already saved once. In a different country. In a different life. When Raven still had a brother, and the world still made some kind of sense. She touched the 2 crumpled bills in her pocket. $2. That's what they thought she was worth. They were about to find out the real price of underestimating Raven Ghost Castillo. And it was going to cost them everything. Raven moved through the darkness like she was born in it. 28 minutes. That was what she had left before Langford's team hit the east service entrance, and Sophie Hale disappeared forever. The building had 4 entry points. The main entrance was crawling with security. The west service door was locked from the inside. The south loading dock had 2 guards rotating on 3-minute intervals. That left the kitchen ventilation access on the north side, a narrow maintenance shaft that most people wouldn't even notice, let alone consider as an entry point. Most people weren't Raven Castillo. She pulled herself up and into the shaft in one fluid motion, ignoring the pain in her arm where Hale's fingers had dug in hard enough to leave bruises. Pain was information. Information she could use later. Right now, it was irrelevant. She crawled 30 feet through darkness, dropped silently into a storage hallway behind the main kitchen, and pressed herself flat against the wall as 2 servers rushed past carrying trays of champagne. Nobody saw her. Nobody heard her. Ghost. The name wasn't decoration. It was a job description. She moved through the service corridors, tracking Sophie's location from the GPS pin the girl's phone had transmitted when she'd responded to Raven's text. Corner table, northeast section of the ballroom. 40 feet from the east service entrance, where Langford's team would be arriving in. She checked her watch. 23 minutes. Her earpiece crackled. Admiral Beckett's voice, tight with controlled urgency. "Ghost, I've got satellite imagery on the east side of the building. 2 vehicles just pulled up. Black SUVs. No plates. 4 men exiting the first vehicle. They're armed." "They're early," Raven whispered. "Langford must have pushed the timeline again. You've got maybe 10 minutes. "I need 5. "Ghost." 5 minutes, Admiral. Then either Sophie walks out with me, or nobody walks out at all." She killed the comm and moved. The ballroom was still in full swing. 400 guests, drinking, laughing, celebrating their own magnificence, while a kill team assembled 50 yards away. Senator Hale was at the podium now, delivering his keynote speech. Something about American values and the sacred duty of public service. And every eye in the room was fixed on him. Every eye except Derek Langford's. He was standing near the east wall, his phone in his hand, his gaze locked on Sophie's table. Waiting. Watching. A predator measuring the distance to his prey. And Sophie was gone. Langford's head snapped up. The table was empty. The champagne glass was still there. The napkin was still there. But Sophie Hale was not. "Where the hell?" He started moving, his eyes scanning the crowd, his hand already reaching for his phone. He never made the call. "Looking for someone?" Raven's voice came from behind him. Quiet. Calm. The voice of a woman pouring water at a charity gala. Not the voice of someone who had just extracted a terrified 19-year-old girl from under the nose of a professional assassination team. Langford spun around. Raven stood 3 feet away. Same olive green shirt, same cargo pants, same long dark brown hair falling across her face. But the submissive catering girl was gone. Completely gone. Like she had never existed. The woman standing in front of Langford now had eyes that could cut steel. "You." Langford's voice was barely a whisper. "Security threw you out. How did you—" "Your team at the east entrance? The 4 men with no plates on their SUVs?" Raven tilted her head slightly. "They're going to be waiting a long time. Sophie isn't here anymore." Langford's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, rage, and then something Raven had seen 1,000 times on the faces of men who suddenly realized they were not the most dangerous person in the room. Fear. "Who are you?" "The girl you threw $2 at," Raven smiled. It was not a warm smile. "The girl who's about to ruin your life." Langford's hand moved toward his jacket, where Raven knew he kept a concealed pistol.
She caught his wrist before his fingers touched the fabric and twisted it behind his back with a motion so fast and precise that Langford didn't even have time to gasp. "Don't," she said softly. "We're in a room full of 400 people, and your boss is giving a speech about American values. Let's not make a scene."
"You have no idea who you're dealing with."
Derek Langford, Deputy National Security Advisor to Senator Vincent Hale,
Selling classified military intelligence to foreign buyers for approximately 6 years. Your activities have directly resulted in the deaths of at least 47 American service members. Raven increased the pressure on his wrist. Something popped. Langford's knees buckled, including 3 members of my unit. The blood drained from Langford's face. "That's impossible. No one has that information. You've covered nothing. You've been sloppy, Langford. Arrogant and sloppy.
just like your boss."
Raven leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper that only he could hear. "Your phone call to the broker 30 minutes ago? I heard every word. Kill Sophie tonight. Fake the kidnapping. Frame foreign terrorists. I recorded all of it." "You're bluffing." "The recording is already on a secure server. Copies sent to the FBI, the CIA, and 3 major news networks on a 12-hour delay. If anything happens to me, to Sophie, or to her mother, those recordings go live. Every network in America will have your voice discussing the murder of a senator's daughter before breakfast." Langford's breathing was ragged now, fast, panicked. The mask of the sophisticated political operative was cracking, and underneath it was nothing but a cornered animal. "What do you want?" "I want you to stand here and smile for the next 20 minutes while your boss finishes his speech. I want you to act normal, shake hands, make small talk, do all the things that small, corrupt men do at parties like this. And then what? And then I want you to go home, pour yourself a very large drink, and enjoy your last night of freedom." Raven released his wrist and stepped back. "Because tomorrow morning, your world ends." She turned and walked away, calm, unhurried, like a woman who had all the time in the world. Langford stood frozen for 3 full seconds. Then he grabbed his phone with shaking hands and dialed. "The extraction is compromised. The woman, she knows everything. She has recordings. Calm down." The broker's voice was ice. "Where is the girl?" "Gone. The woman took her. I don't know where." "Then find her." "You don't understand. This woman, she's not law enforcement. She's not FBI. She's something else. Military. Special operations. The way she moved. The way she—" "I said calm down." The broker's tone cut through Langford's panic like a razor. "One woman. That's all she is. One woman against my entire operation. She's brave, I'll give her that. But brave people die just as easily as cowards. She has recordings of our call." Silence on the line. 3 seconds. 5. 7. "That changes things," the broker said finally. "But it doesn't change the objective. Sophie Hale still needs to disappear. And now, so does your mystery woman." "How? She could be anywhere by now." "She's not anywhere. She's protecting the girl, which means she's taken her somewhere she thinks is safe." The broker's voice carried the calm certainty of a man who had been hunting people for 40 years. "I have contacts in every agency. NSA, FBI, military intelligence. Give me 2 hours. I'll find them both. And then? And then I'll send a team that doesn't fail." Langford ended the call and looked across the ballroom. Senator Hale was still at the podium, still talking about duty and sacrifice and the American way. The crowd was applauding,
Cameras were flashing. 400 of the most powerful people in Washington were completely oblivious to the fact that a 19-year-old girl had just been smuggled out of the building by a woman they'd humiliated with $2. Langford straightened his tie, fixed his expression, walked back toward the crowd. He had 2 hours. 2 hours to find Sophie Hale before that recording destroyed everything he'd built. 40 minutes earlier, Raven had gotten to Sophie first. The girl was in the women's restroom, hiding in the last stall, her phone clutched to her chest, her body shaking so hard that her teeth were chattering. "Sophie," Raven's voice was low, firm, controlled. "It's me. We need to go. Now." The stall door opened. Sophie stared at her with eyes that held 2 years of terror and 6 months of unbearable secrets. "He's going to kill me, isn't he? Langford, he's really going to do it." "Not tonight." Raven took her hand. Sophie's fingers were ice cold. "I need you to walk with me. Normal pace. Don't run. Don't look back. Don't look at anyone. Keep your eyes on the floor and follow my lead." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere Langford can't reach you." They moved through the service corridors. Raven guided Sophie past the kitchen, through a storage room, and out the north maintenance access. A car was waiting, positioned there hours ago as part of Raven's contingency planning. "Get in, back seat, keep your head down." Sophie obeyed without question. Raven slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and pulled onto the street. They drove 4 blocks before either of them spoke. "How did you know?" Sophie's voice was barely audible. "How did you know what Langford was planning?" "I heard him make the call 30 minutes ago in the service corridor. He told the broker to move tonight. Professional kidnapping, ransom demand, failed negotiation." Raven checked the rearview mirror. Clear. "They were going to make it look like foreign terrorists took you. Your father's grief would fuel his presidential campaign." "My father," Sophie laughed. It was the most broken sound Raven had ever heard. "Of course. Everything always comes back to his campaign." Raven said nothing. She drove. Fast, but not reckless. Taking a route she'd memorized days ago, one that avoided traffic cameras and law enforcement checkpoints. "The woman from the gala," Sophie said quietly. "The one my father threw money at. The one they dragged out like garbage." She paused. "That's really you." "That's really me." "And Afghanistan. The helicopter. The woman who held my hand and told me I'd be okay." "Also me." Sophie was quiet for a long time. Then, "Why? Why would you come back after what my father did to you tonight? Why would you risk everything to save me?" Raven's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Her knuckles went white. "Because the last time I saved you, 3 men on my team didn't come home. 3 men who had wives, children, families who are still waiting for answers they'll never get." "I know about them." Sophie's voice cracked. "I found the files on Langford's computer. I know what happened in Afghanistan." "I know everything." "Then you know why I'm here. The intelligence leaks, the weapons sales, the soldiers who died because of information Langford sold to—" "Not just Langford." Raven glanced at the rearview mirror. Sophie's face was a mask of guilt and devastation. "Your father, Sophie. I need to hear you say it." Silence. Long. Heavy. Like the space between a bullet and its target. "My father arranged my kidnapping in Afghanistan." Sophie's voice broke completely. "It was supposed to be a publicity stunt, a way to boost his approval ratings before his first presidential campaign. He made a deal with a local warlord. I'd be taken, held for a few days, then rescued by private contractors he'd hired. He'd look like a grieving father, a victim of terrorism, a hero. But something went wrong.
The warlord double-crossed him, sold me to actual terrorists who had no intention of letting me go alive. By the time my father realized what happened, it was too late. The only option was to call in real military. Navy SEALs. Sophie was crying now, hard. The kind of crying that comes from a place so deep it doesn't have a name. Your team. Raven drove in silence for 30 seconds. Her jaw was clenched so tight, the muscles in her neck stood out like cables. 3 of my teammates died in that extraction. Her voice was barely human. 3 men who went into hell because they believed they were saving an innocent girl from terrorists. They didn't know it was a setup. They didn't know a United States senator had manufactured the entire thing for a campaign commercial. I didn't know either, Sophie screamed. I was 19. I didn't know what my father was planning. I didn't know anyone would die. But you found out. 2 years later, you found Langford's files, and you learned the truth. And you said nothing. I tried. Sophie wiped her face with both hands, her mascara leaving dark streaks like war paint. I contacted the FBI. I thought I could expose the intelligence leaks without revealing my father's role. Just Langford, just the arms dealing. What happened? Langford found out. Within 24 hours, my FBI contact was dead. Car accident. Except it wasn't an accident. Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper. Then I got a package. Photos of my mother, taken from inside our house. Inside her bedroom. Inside her bathroom. Langford's message. He didn't need to write a note. I understood perfectly. Sophie wrapped her arms around herself. Stay silent or watch your mother die. So I stayed silent for 6 months. I went to charity events, smiled for cameras, played the perfect senator's daughter, while my father's chief advisor sold secrets that got American soldiers killed. And I knew everything. And I said nothing. Raven pulled into an underground parking structure and killed the engine. She sat still for 10 seconds. Then she turned around to face Sophie directly. The men who died in Afghanistan. One of them was named Diego Castillo. Sophie blinked. Castillo? That's your... My brother. Raven's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed something that 14 years of SEAL training couldn't hide. Raw, unprocessed volcanic grief. He was 28 years old. He had a wife named Lucia and a 2-year-old daughter named Camila. He was the team leader. When the extraction went sideways, when the real terrorists ambushed us, Diego stayed behind to cover our escape. Sophie's face crumbled. He took 4 bullets. 4. Raven held up her hand, fingers spread except the thumb. 1 in the shoulder, 1 in the chest, 2 in the stomach. He was still firing his weapon when I dragged you onto that helicopter. He was still fighting when I went back for him. You went back? I always go back. Raven's voice broke for the first time. Just for a second. Just enough to show that underneath the operator, underneath the code name, underneath 14 years of missions and training and the iron discipline that had kept her alive in the worst places on Earth, there was a 22-year-old woman who had lost the only family she had left. He died in my arms, 60 seconds before the medevac landed. 60 seconds. That's all he needed. 60 more seconds and he would have lived. Sophie was sobbing. I'm sorry. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me, Raven's voice hardened. Apologize to Camilla, who will never know her father. Apologize to Lucia, who had to raise a child alone because a politician wanted better poll numbers. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't... I believe you. Raven took a breath, then another, forcing the rage back down, compartmentalizing, separating the grief from the mission, the personal from the operational, the sister from the SEAL. Your father's sins aren't your responsibility, Sophie, but what you do next, that is.
Sophie looked at her through tears. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to tell me everything. Every file, every name, every transaction Langford has been running for the past 6 years. And I need you to be ready to testify, in front of a grand jury, on the record, against your own father." "He'll destroy me. His lawyers? His connections?" "His lawyers can't help him where he's going." Raven leaned forward. "I'm not asking you to do this for me. I'm asking you to do it for the 47 soldiers who died because of intelligence Langford sold. For their families. For Diego. For Camilla." Sophie was quiet for a long moment, tears still streaming, hands still shaking. But something was changing behind her eyes. Something was hardening, crystallizing. "There's something else," she said. "Something I haven't told you." Raven waited. Sophie reached into her clutch purse and pulled out a small USB drive. "The files I found on Langford's computer. I didn't just read them. I copied everything. Financial records, communications, names of every buyer, every contact, every government official on his payroll, bank account numbers, weapons shipment manifests, recordings of phone calls." Raven stared at the drive. "I've been carrying this for 6 months," Sophie said, "waiting for someone I could trust." "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "Because I wasn't sure." Sophie held out the drive. "Now I am." Raven took it. The small piece of plastic weighed almost nothing, but what it contained was heavier than anything she'd ever carried in her life. "This changes everything," Raven said quietly. "With this, I don't just take down Langford. I take down everyone he's ever worked with. Every buyer, every corrupt official, every politician who looked the other way. Including my father." "Including your father," Raven met her eyes. "Are you okay with that?" Sophie didn't hesitate. "My father arranged to have me kidnapped. 3 men died because of his ambition. Dozens more died because of intelligence his advisor sold." Her voice was cold now, hard. The voice of a woman who had spent 6 months in hell and had finally decided to fight her way out. "He deserves whatever's coming." Raven slipped the drive into her pocket. "Then stay here. This is a Navy intelligence safe house. You're protected. Don't open the door for anyone but me." "Where are you going?" "Norfolk. The broker runs his operation out of a shipping warehouse on the waterfront. Langford's network, his buyers, his contacts. The broker knows everything. I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse." "Alone? Against his entire operation?" "I work best alone." "That's insane." Sophie grabbed her arm. "He has mercenaries, professional killers. You're one person." Raven stood up and moved toward the door. Then she stopped, turned back. "What if you don't come back?" Sophie's voice was small, terrified. "Then take that drive to Admiral James Beckett. He'll know what to do." Raven opened the door. "But I'm coming back. I promise." "How can you promise that?" Raven touched the $2 bills in her pocket. 2 crumpled pieces of paper that a powerful man had thrown at her face to prove she was nothing. "Because I still have a receipt to collect." She walked out into the night. Sophie sat alone in the silence, holding her phone, watching the door close, and praying, for the first time in years, that someone out there was listening. Raven drove east toward Norfolk. 1 hour, alone on the highway, the city lights shrinking in her rearview mirror, the darkness ahead stretching out like a promise and a threat. She called Beckett one last time. "Warden, change of plans. I have intelligence that can bring down Langford's entire network. I'm going to the broker, not to fight, to negotiate." "Negotiate? With a man who's killed dozens of people?" "He's a businessman, Admiral. He sells weapons and intelligence to the highest bidder. Right now, Langford is his client. But Langford's empire is about to collapse. The broker knows it. And men like him don't go down with sinking ships.
They find new ships. What are you offering? Freedom, full immunity, new identity, in exchange for testimony against Langford and every name in his network. The broker will never agree. He will when I show him what's on Sophie's drive. When he sees that Langford's entire operation is already compromised. When he understands that his only two options are cooperate or spend the rest of his life in a supermax prison. Raven's voice was steady, certain. The voice of someone who had calculated every angle and already knew the outcome. I'm going to walk into his warehouse, sit down across from a man who has killed more people than I can count, and convince him that betraying his partner is the smartest business decision he'll ever make. How? By doing what I do best, Admiral. Raven smiled in the darkness. By letting him underestimate me until it's too late. She ended the call and pressed the accelerator. Norfolk was 1 hour away, and everything, every secret, every lie, every life that had been lost, and every life that could still be saved, hung on what happened when Raven Castillo walked into the most dangerous room she'd ever entered and bet everything on a bluff that had to work. Because if it didn't, Sophie would die. Margaret would die. The truth about Diego and 47 other American soldiers would die with them. And the men who threw $2 at a woman they considered worthless would win. Raven drove faster. That was not going to happen. The drive to Norfolk took 57 minutes. Raven spent every one of them thinking about Diego. Not the way he died. She'd replayed that enough times to last 10 lifetimes. The blood, the bullets, the 60 seconds that separated life from death. No, tonight she thought about the way he lived. The way he laughed too loud at his own jokes. The way he'd call her at 2 a.m. just to ask if she'd eaten dinner. The way he'd held Camilla for the first time. This giant, battle-hardened seal cradling a 6-pound baby girl like she was made of glass, and whispered, "I'm going to make the world safe for you, little one. That's my new mission." He didn't finish that mission. Derek Langford made sure of that. Raven killed the headlights a quarter-mile from the warehouse and pulled off the road. She sat in the darkness for 30 seconds, breathing, centering, pushing Diego back into the locked room in her mind, where she kept the things that could destroy her if she let them out at the wrong moment. Then she opened the door and started walking. The broker's security was professional. Perimeter guards on rotating patrol. Surveillance cameras covering every approach. Motion sensors along the fence line. Infrared tripwires at the main entrance. 14 years of SEAL training had taught Raven things most people couldn't imagine. How to breathe without making a sound. How to move without disturbing the air. How to find the one blind spot in a system designed by men who believed their system had no blind spots. She found it in 4 minutes. A maintenance hatch on the north side. Rusted, neglected, overlooked, because no one in their right mind would try to squeeze through an opening that small. Raven wasn't in her right mind. She was in her mission mind. And in her mission mind, impossible was just another word for Tuesday. She was inside the building in 6 minutes, moving through corridors she'd never seen, building a mental map in real time, counting guards, tracking patrol patterns, cataloging weapons and exit routes with the automatic precision of someone who had been doing this since she was 18 years old. 12 guards on the ground floor, 4 on the second level. 2 outside the main office where she could hear a voice, calm, controlled, heavily accented. The broker. "The delivery is late." His tone carried the irritation of a man accustomed to precision. "Langford assured me the girl would be here by now. We lost contact with the extraction team 2 hours ago." Another voice, nervous, subordinate. "Something went wrong at the gala." Something always goes wrong,
That's why contingency plans exist. A pause. Call Langford. I want answers. Raven stepped out of the shadows and into the doorway. I can save you the phone call. The room froze. 3 men, 2 guards and the broker himself, stared at her like she'd materialized from thin air. The guards reached for their weapons. I wouldn't. Raven's voice was conversational, almost friendly, like she was recommending a restaurant, not threatening armed men. There are 12 Navy SEALs surrounding this building, snipers on the rooftops, assault teams at every entrance. One wrong move, and this conversation ends very badly for everyone in this room. It was a bluff. Her backup was still 45 minutes out, but they didn't know that. The broker raised his hand. The guard stopped. He studied Raven with the cold, analytical eyes of a man who had survived 4 decades in the arms trade by reading people the way accountants read spreadsheets. He was older than she'd expected. Mid-60s, gray hair. The face of someone who had seen humanity at its absolute worst and had decided to profit from it. You're lying, he said. Am I? Raven stepped further into the room. Hands visible, relaxed. Every muscle in her body coiled like a spring, but showing nothing on the surface. You can test that theory, but I'd suggest hearing me out first. Who are you? Lieutenant Commander Raven Castillo, Navy SEAL, Team 6. Something shifted in his eyes. Recognition. The kind that comes not from seeing a face before, but from hearing a name whispered in the darkest corners of the intelligence world. The one they call Ghost. You've heard of me. I've heard rumors. A woman operator who does impossible things. Extraction in Syria. Hostage rescue in Yemen. The dismantling of Qasiri's network in Beirut. The broker leaned back. Impressive resume for someone so young. I started early. Then why are you here, alone, without your team, walking into a room full of men who would kill you without hesitation? Because I'm not here to fight you. Raven pulled the USB drive from her pocket and set it on the table between them. I'm here to make you rich. The broker's eyes locked onto the drive. What is that? Everything. Every transaction Derek Langford has conducted for the past 6 years. Financial records, communications, weapons shipments, names of every buyer, every seller, every corrupt official who took a cut. Raven paused. Let it land. Combined with your testimony, it's enough to bring down not just Langford, but everyone he's ever worked with. The buyers, the suppliers, the politicians who look the other way, including Senator Vincent Hale. Including the senator. The broker's expression didn't change, but his fingers, resting on the arm of his chair, twitched. Just once. And what do you want in exchange? Full cooperation, complete testimony, every name, every operation, every secret you've accumulated in 40 years of business. In exchange for what? Freedom, full immunity, new documentation, a location of your choosing anywhere in the world. You disappear. Clean slate, no prosecution, no extradition. You can guarantee this? I can arrange it through channels that even Langford sources can't reach. The broker was silent. 10 seconds. 20. Raven could hear her own heartbeat, steady and controlled, counting the seconds like a metronome. Langford has paid me very well for many years, the broker said finally. He's connected, protected, powerful. Langford is finished. Raven's voice was flat, absolute. His kidnapping of Sophie Hale failed. The FBI already has recordings of his conversations with you. By tomorrow morning, his face will be on every news channel in America. His accounts will be frozen. His contacts will be running for cover. And anyone still standing next to him when the walls come down will be buried in the rubble. You're asking me to betray a client. I'm offering you a choice.
testify and disappear with a new life, or go down with Langford when his empire collapses. Raven leaned forward. You're a businessman. Calculate the odds. The broker studied her face for a long, measured moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. I always knew Langford was careless, too arrogant, too convinced of his own invincibility. He shook his head. A man who throws money at a stranger to prove his power is a man who doesn't understand what real power looks like. That was the senator. They're the same species. The broker stood and gestured for his guards to leave. Give us the room. The guards hesitated. Now. They left. The door closed. Raven and the broker faced each other across the table. Two predators negotiating territory. I'll tell you something, Ghost. The moment you walked through that door, I knew what you were. The way you carry yourself. The way you breathe. The way your eyes mapped every exit in this room before you finished your first sentence. He walked to a safe in the corner and opened it. Langford couldn't see it, because Langford sees what he wants to see. A young woman in cheap clothes. Beneath him. Irrelevant. He pulled out a thick folder and set it on the table. But I have survived 40 years in this business by seeing what is actually there. He tapped the folder. This is everything. Every transaction, every buyer, every weapon that passed through my hands, every government official who took payment to look the other way. Raven opened the folder. What she saw made her blood freeze. Names. Dozens of names. Senators, generals, intelligence officials, foreign leaders, cabinet members, people whose faces appeared on the nightly news, people who sat in rooms where the fate of nations was decided. My God, she breathed. Now you understand why I agreed so quickly. The broker's voice was grim, tired, like a man who had carried a weight for too long and was finally ready to set it down. Langford isn't the disease. He's a symptom. The real infection runs through the entire system, deeper than you imagined, deeper than your admiral imagined. How deep? Deep enough that the people in that folder will burn this country to the ground before they let themselves be exposed. Deep enough that taking down Langford might not even matter if the roots survive. Raven closed the folder. Then I'll take down the roots, too. You wanted to destroy an empire, Ghost. The broker met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw something that might have been respect. You're about to destroy several. I can live with that. The broker nodded slowly. I believe you can. I believe... The door behind Raven exploded open. 6 guards, weapons raised, tactical formation, blocking every exit. And behind them, smiling like a man who had just won the lottery, stood Derek Langford. Hello, Ghost. His voice was silk and venom. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Raven didn't move, didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed on the broker, reading him, calculating whether the old man had set her up or been caught off guard. The broker's face told her everything. He hadn't known. His jaw was tight. His hands had moved to the edge of the table. He was just as trapped as she was. I have to admit, Langford said, walking into the room, I'm impressed. When my team at the gala went silent, I assumed FBI interference. Political rivals making a move. I never imagined a single woman, a girl my boss threw $2 at, could extract Sophie from a building full of 400 people without anyone noticing. You underestimated me. A common mistake, apparently. Langford's eyes shifted to the broker. And you, old friend, negotiating with the enemy, handing over files. I'm disappointed. I was negotiating with the winner. The broker showed no fear. You become sloppy, Derek. Careless. It was only a matter of time before someone followed the trail, And you thought you'd save yourself by selling me out. I thought I'd survive. It's what I've done for 40 years. Langford laughed. It was a cold, ugly sound that bounced off the walls. You're both delusional. Neither of you is walking out of here. He nodded at his guards. Take them. Raven moved. She grabbed the broker's chair and hurled it at the nearest guard, buying a fraction of a second. Her elbow connected with the next man's throat as she spun, using his falling body as a shield against the third attacker's rifle. 3 down in 2 seconds. But there were too many. A rifle butt caught her in the ribs. The impact folded her in half. Pain exploded through her chest. Not the clean pain of a punch, but the deep, grinding pain that meant something might be cracked. Hands grabbed her arms, forced her to her knees. Someone ripped the folder from her grip. Langford walked toward her slowly, savoring every step. You know what your problem is, Ghost? He crouched down to her level, close enough that she could see the capillaries in his eyes. You think your training makes you invincible. You think your skills and your reputation and your little code name mean something. He leaned closer. But in the end, you're just one woman, one body to be broken, just like every other obstacle I've removed over the past 6 years. Like your kidnapping team at the gala? Raven spat blood on the floor. Like your Georgetown operation? Like every plan you've made tonight that I've already destroyed. Setbacks, Langford stood up. He took the folder from his guard and flipped through it. His face went pale as he saw the contents. Jesus Christ! If this had reached the wrong hands. He closed the folder. Fortunately, I have excellent sources. I knew the moment you left the safe house. I knew the route you took. I knew exactly where you were going. Your sources inside the FBI, among others. You'd be amazed how many people will sell information for the right price. Langford tucked the folder under his arm. Speaking of which, where is Sophie? Raven said nothing. Silent. Langford's smile turned cruel. We'll see how long that lasts. He nodded at his guards. Take her downstairs. Find out how much pain the legendary Ghost can handle before she breaks. They dragged her down a flight of stairs. The basement smelled like rust and bleach and old fear. They strapped her to a metal chair, industrial restraints on her wrists and ankles. One guard behind her, one by the door. Langford pulled up a chair and sat directly across from her, 3 feet away, knees almost touching. Intimate, like a conversation between friends. Let's start simple, he said. Where is Sophie Hale? Go to hell. Langford sighed. He nodded at the guard behind Raven. A fist slammed into her kidney from behind. The pain was blinding, white hot, the kind that made the body want to shut down and the mind want to scream. Raven didn't scream. Where is Sophie? Still in hell. You should visit. Another blow, then another. Then a fourth that hit so hard Raven tasted copper and felt something warm running down her chin. She retreated into herself. SIR training. Survival, evasion, resistance, escape. The mental techniques they taught operators to endure exactly this kind of situation. Pain is temporary. Information is permanent. Protect the asset. Protect the mission. Everything else is noise. You're very strong, Langford said, almost admiringly. Most people would be screaming by now. I'm not most people. No, you're not. Which is why I'm going to try something different. He pulled out his phone and held it up. On the screen was a photograph of Margaret Hale, the senator's wife, bound and gagged in the back of a vehicle. Your people moved her to a safe house after the gala. Did you really think my network was that small? Raven's stomach dropped. You're bluffing. Naval intelligence has leaks, Ghost, just like everyone else. My team picked up Margaret 20 minutes ago. She's en route to a secondary location as we speak. If you hurt her, that's entirely up to you.
Langford put the phone away. Tell me where Sophie is and Margaret lives. Stay silent and she dies. Slowly. Painfully. And I'll make sure you hear every second of it. Raven's mind raced. Margaret was supposed to be safe. Beckett had assured her. But Beckett didn't know about all of Langford's sources. Nobody did. The corruption was deeper than anyone had imagined. The broker had told her. The infection ran through the entire system. Clock's ticking, Ghost. 5 minutes. Sophie's location for Margaret's life. You'll kill them both anyway. Probably. But this way, you get to choose who dies first. Langford spread his hands. Isn't that a comfort? Raven closed her eyes. She thought about Margaret Hale, a woman who had looked at Raven tonight and seen a person, not trash, not a gold digger, not a joke. A woman who had told her husband, "That's enough," when no one else in that room had the courage to speak. She thought about Sophie, sitting alone in a safe house, clutching her phone, praying that Raven would keep her promise. She thought about Diego, about Camilla, about 47 soldiers who would never come home. And she made her decision. The safe house, Raven said quietly. Wisconsin Avenue, 3rd floor. Langford's eyes narrowed. That's Sophie's Georgetown apartment, the one my team already hit. I moved her back there after your team failed. No one would think to look in the same place twice. You're lying. Send your men. See for yourself. Raven met his eyes, dead steady, not a flicker of deception. The best lies were the ones built on absolute conviction, and 14 years of operating behind enemy lines had made Raven the best liar on the planet. But let Margaret go first. Langford studied her face, searching for the tell, the twitch, the micro-expression that would reveal the bluff. He found nothing. Team 2, he said into his radio. Proceed to the Georgetown address, apartment 3C. Confirm target presence. Static. Then, copy, en route. ETA 12 minutes. We'll know soon enough. Langford stood. If you're lying, the next hour will be the worst of your life. I'm not lying. Langford walked out. The door closed. The lock engaged. Raven was alone with 2 guards. And the exact moment, she heard Langford's footsteps reach the top of the stairs, she began working the restraints. She'd been loosening them since the second they strapped her down. Tiny movements, millimeter adjustments, flexing and relaxing her wrists to create slack that wasn't there when they buckled the straps. The guards hadn't noticed, because the guards were watching a beaten, bleeding woman who looked like she had given up. They weren't watching an operator executing a plan. 5 minutes. Her right hand came free. She froze. The guard behind her shifted his weight, looked down at his phone, looked back up. Raven didn't breathe. The guard turned toward his partner and said something about the game last Sunday. Her left hand came free. She waited. 1 second. 2. The guard by the door looked away. Raven's right hand found the guard behind her. A precise strike to the base of his skull. He dropped without a sound. She caught his knife as he fell, sliced through the ankle restraints in a single motion, and was on her feet before the guard by the door registered that the room had gone quiet. He started to turn. His hand went for his radio. Raven's knife reached him first. 2 guards down. No alarm. 12 seconds. She took the first guard's pistol, checked the magazine, 8 rounds, and moved toward the door. Her ribs screamed with every breath. Her kidneys felt like they'd been hit with a sledgehammer. Blood was still dripping from her chin. None of it mattered. She climbed the stairs, silent, controlled. Every step calculated, every breath measured.
She could hear voices above, Langford giving orders, the broker, still under guard, saying nothing. "Team 2 reports negative," a guard's voice. "The apartment is empty." Langford cursed. She lied. I knew she was lying. "What do we do?" "Kill the wife. Send Margaret's body to the senator as a message. Then we find Sophie ourselves. Tear apart every safe house in the district if we have to." Raven burst through the door. The element of surprise lasted 2 seconds, long enough for her to put 2 guards down and dive behind a steel support beam as the room erupted in gunfire. "She's loose!" someone screamed. "How the hell did she—" Raven returned fire. Controlled. Precise. Every shot placed where it needed to be. She counted the hostiles. 8 remaining, plus Langford. The broker was against the far wall, hands still bound, watching the chaos with the detached expression of a man who had seen too many firefights to be impressed by one more. "Broker!" Raven shouted between rounds. "Now would be a good time to pick a side." The broker looked at Langford, looked at Raven, looked at the guards dropping one by one. Then he looked at the guard standing next to him, the one whose holster was 6 inches from the broker's bound hands. The broker made his choice. He headbutted the guard, grabbed the man's pistol as he staggered, and put 2 rounds into the next nearest hostile. "I always bet on the winner," he said calmly. Between Raven's surgical precision and the broker's ruthless efficiency, it was over in under 3 minutes. Langford's remaining guards went down one by one until the warehouse floor was silent, except for the sound of shell casings rolling across concrete. Langford himself had retreated to the upstairs office, barricaded inside. Raven could hear him through the door. Frantic, desperate, the controlled predator finally reduced to what he'd always been underneath. A coward. "It's over, Langford." Raven's voice was steady, despite the blood and the pain and the cracked ribs that sent lightning through her chest with every word. "Your men are down. Your network is exposed. Come out with your hands up." "You think this is over?" Langford's voice was muffled but defiant. "I still have Margaret. 1 phone call and she's dead. Make the call." Raven chambered around. "And I'll make sure you never make another one." Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Then the sound of a phone dialing. Raven didn't wait. She kicked in the door and crossed the room before Langford could finish pressing the last digit. He was standing by the window, phone in one hand, pistol in the other. He tried to raise the weapon. Raven's bullet shattered his kneecap. The scream that came out of Derek Langford was not the sound of a powerful man. It was not the sound of a sophisticated intelligence broker who had sold secrets for 6 years and ordered the deaths of dozens. It was the sound of a small, broken thing that had finally run out of places to hide. He collapsed. The phone and pistol clattered across the floor. Raven kicked them away and stood over him. "Where is Margaret?" "I'll never—" Raven pressed her boot against his shattered knee. The sound he made wasn't human. "Where is Margaret?" "Vehicle, heading south. Route 40. Blue van. Virginia plates." Langford was sobbing now, completely shattered. Every ounce of superiority, every drop of arrogance, every trace of the man who had smiled while planning a 19-year-old girl's murder. Gone. Stripped away by pain and the sudden, devastating realization that the woman he had dismissed as nothing was the one who had just ended everything. Raven grabbed the radio from his belt. "Warden, this is Ghost. I have the location of the secondary hostage. Blue van, southbound, Route 40, Virginia plates. Intercept immediately." "Copy, Ghost. Air assets are in the area. Intercepting now." Raven looked down at Langford. This man who had sold weapons that killed her brother, who had ordered the kidnapping of a 19-year-old girl,
who had threatened to murder a woman to protect his secrets, who had tortured Raven in a basement and smiled while doing it. "You know what the worst part is?" she said quietly. "You could have had everything. Power, wealth, influence, a career that actually meant something. But you were so busy looking down on people you considered beneath you that you never saw the threat standing right in front of your face." "Please," Langford reached toward her with a trembling hand. "I can give you money, information, anything. Name your price." "I want my brother back," Raven's voice cracked. For the first time in hours, for the first time since she'd locked Diego away in that room in her mind. "I want Diego Castillo alive. I want his daughter to have a father. I want his wife to stop crying herself to sleep every night. I want to take back the 4 bullets that killed him in an Afghan desert, because you sold intelligence to the people who ambushed us." "I can't." "No, you can't." Raven stepped back. "But you can give me something else. You can give me justice." She pulled out her phone and pressed record. "Derek Langford, you are under arrest for treason, conspiracy to commit murder, and illegal arms trafficking. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Langford stared at her in disbelief. "You're reading me my rights? I'm a United States Navy officer. I follow the law, even when dealing with people who don't deserve its protection." Raven secured his hands behind his back with zip ties. "You'll get a trial. You'll get lawyers. You'll get every right guaranteed by the Constitution that you spent 6 years betraying. And when you're convicted, and you will be convicted, you'll spend the rest of your life in a cell, knowing that a woman you mocked with $2 is the one who put you there." The broker appeared in the doorway, blood on his shirt, a calm expression on his face, as if what had just happened was simply another Tuesday in a long career of violent Tuesdays. "Warehouse is secured. Your backup should be arriving any minute." "And Margaret?" "Your admiral just confirmed interception." Blue van stopped on Route 40. "Margaret Hale is safe, shaken but unharmed." Raven closed her eyes. The relief hit her like a wave, enormous, overwhelming, nearly enough to knock her off her feet. She grabbed the edge of a desk to steady herself. "It's over," she whispered. Not quite. The broker walked to the safe and retrieved the folder that Langford's men had taken. He held it out to Raven. "You still need this." She took it, felt the weight of it, the names inside. The careers that would end, the dynasties that would fall, the political landscape of the most powerful nation on Earth, about to be reshaped by a folder full of evidence and a 22-year-old woman that nobody had taken seriously. "The names in that folder will destroy everything," the broker said quietly. "Are you prepared for that?" "I'm prepared for the truth." Raven tucked the folder under her arm. "Whatever comes after that is up to the American people." "Idealistic," the broker almost smiled. "Naive even. But I suppose that's the difference between us. You still believe the system can work. I believe people deserve the chance to make it work." "Then you're either very brave or very foolish." "I've been called both." The broker nodded slowly. "The deal. Immunity. New identity. A quiet life somewhere warm. That's the deal. I've kept many deals in my life, Ghost. Profitable ones. Dangerous ones. Ones that kept me alive when smarter men died." He paused, looked around the warehouse, at the bodies, the bullet holes, the blood, the wreckage of an empire that had taken decades to build and minutes to destroy. None of them felt quite like this. "Like what?" "Like I might actually be doing something worthwhile." He shrugged. "Strange feeling. I'm not sure I like it." Raven's radio crackled. "Ghost, this is Warden. Backup has arrived. Warehouse is being secured. FBI tactical teams are en route for evidence collection. Copy, Warden. Raven looked at Langford, crumpled on the floor, sobbing into the concrete. Then at the broker, standing amid the ruins of his own operation, with the resigned calm of a man who had finally reached the end of a very long road. Then at the folder in her hands. 47 soldiers, 3 teammates, 1 brother, Diego. She pressed the $2 bills in her pocket, feeling the creased paper against her fingers. 2 crumpled pieces of nothing that a powerful man had thrown at her face to prove she was worthless. She wasn't worthless. She had never been worthless. And by morning, the whole world would know it. The FBI tactical teams arrived 17 minutes after Raven's call. By then, the warehouse was already secured. Langford was zip-tied and bleeding on the floor, and the broker was sitting quietly in a corner, waiting for the immunity deal he'd been promised, with the patience of a man who had waited for worse things in worse places. Admiral Beckett came through the door first. He stopped when he saw Raven, took in the blood on her face, the way she held her left arm against her ribs, the bruises already darkening along her jaw and neck, the way she stood, upright, solid, refusing to show the pain that was screaming through every nerve in her body. Ghost. His voice was careful, controlled, but his eyes told a different story. How bad? Couple cracked ribs, maybe 3. Kidney contusion. Nothing that won't heal. You look like you went 12 rounds with a freight train. You should see the freight train. Raven nodded toward Langford, who was being loaded onto a stretcher by 2 medics, who clearly weren't bothering to be gentle. He talked. Everything. Margaret's location, the network contacts, the operational structure. He broke in about 4 minutes once the shooting stopped. They always do. Beckett put a hand on her shoulder. Gentle. The way a father would. You should be in a hospital. After the debrief. Raven, after the debrief, sir. Her voice left no room for argument. How many arrests? Beckett pulled out his phone and scrolled through a series of encrypted messages. 47 and counting. 6 states. Langford's network is collapsing faster than we can process the warrants. The USB drive Sophie gave you? The analysts are calling it the single largest intelligence haul in domestic counter-espionage history. And the names in the broker's folder? Beckett's expression darkened. Being processed. Carefully. Some of those names. He stopped, looked around, lowered his voice. Some of those names are people I've saluted, Raven. People I've served under. People who sat across from me in briefing rooms and made decisions about operations that got men and women killed. I know. This is going to shake the foundations of the entire defense establishment. Good. The foundations were rotten. Raven looked him dead in the eyes. What about Diego? What about the Afghanistan operation? Beckett was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that holds grief and rage and helplessness all at once. The Pentagon is preparing a full disclosure. Everything. Senator Hale's role in arranging the kidnapping, the double-cross, the extraction that should never have been necessary. His voice thickened. Your brother will be posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. His family will be notified before the public announcement. Raven felt it hit her. Not like a bullet. She knew what bullets felt like. This was worse. Slower. A crack that started somewhere deep in her chest and spread outward until it reached every corner of everything she'd been holding together for the past 12 hours. He deserved better, she said. He deserved to live. He did. Beckett's hand tightened on her shoulder. But at least now the world will know what kind of man he was. A hero. The real kind. Not the kind that politicians pretend to be at charity galas. Raven nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. Go see Sophie and Margaret, Beckett said. They've been asking for you all night. Then I want you in a hospital. That's an order, not a suggestion. Yes, sir. And Raven, Beckett hesitated. Then, "Your brother would be proud of what you did tonight. I hope you know that." She walked away before he could see her eyes. The drive to the safe house took 40 minutes. Raven spent every one of them in silence. No music, no phone calls. Just the road and the darkness and the steady throb of pain in her ribs that reminded her she was still alive when so many others weren't. She pulled into the underground garage and killed the engine. Sat there for a full minute. Hands on the steering wheel. Eyes closed. Diego. She could see him so clearly, it was like he was sitting in the passenger seat. That ridiculous grin he always wore before a mission. The way he'd crack his knuckles and say, "Let's go make the world slightly less terrible, little sister." She missed him so much it was like being hollowed out. Like someone had reached inside her chest and removed everything that made existing bearable. And the space they'd left behind was so vast and so empty that she could hear her own heartbeat echoing inside it. "I got them, Diego," she whispered. "I got the people who did this to you." No answer. There would never be an answer. That was the cruelest part of grief. The questions that would never get responses. The conversations that would only ever be one-sided. She wiped her eyes, got out of the car, walked upstairs. The guard at the safe house door recognized her immediately. "Commander Castillo, they've been waiting all night. Mrs. Hale hasn't slept." "How are they?" "Scared, but strong." The guard shook his head with something like admiration. "Stronger than most people would be after what they've been through." Raven pushed through the door. Sophie and Margaret were sitting together on the small couch, hands intertwined, shoulders touching. Two women who had lost everything, their family name, their security, their entire understanding of the world they'd lived in, and were holding on to each other, like survivors clinging to wreckage after a shipwreck. They looked up when Raven entered. Margaret's hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God, your face! What did they—" "It looks worse than it is." It didn't. It looked exactly